Again, we're in the Song of Songs, which was a song written by King Solomon. It was the top song of his love relationship. And it's a song that we're writing. It's not, it's, on one hand, we read it, it inspires us. But on the other hand, it's a song that we entered into. And the Holy Spirit is just writing it into our hearts through revelation of Christ, through experience of Christ, through the supply of Christ we gain day by day, through the hard things in our life. He's writing the song in. And so we're in chapter 8 of this song, and this chapter is a chapter of maturity. The bride has passed through so many things as a seeking maiden, and she's mature. And in chapter 8, verse 8, we're just going to cover part of the verse. It says, "We have a little sister and she has no breasts." So she starts off, the bride speaks this verse or this of the song and says, "We." It's no longer an independent seeker. It's no longer an independent bride, but she uses the personal pronoun we. We have a little sister. It's not my sister. It's in union with Christ, everything is done. Her bridal beauty, her bridal affections, her bridal qualities are all because she's in union with Christ. Christ has grown in her. And now her vision, her burden, her service is also in a union with Christ. So she says, we have a little sister, a young one, one that hasn't had much growth, much care. And she says, she has no breasts. So she's very a tender young person, little girl that needs to grow up and develop bridal beauty to increase the corporate bride of the Lamb. So as in 2 Timothy 2:2, she's learned that whatever she has, she needs to pass on to others, that they can grow, that they can become what she is, a mature bride. And so she's not looking after her own interests anymore, but she begins to look at the interests of others. She cares for their growth. So this is a sign of maturity when we begin to reach out towards others. And so this one of tender age that lacks the growth of life, she says she has no breasts. For so this little one is unable to minister the milk of the word to others. So she's been born again. She's called a sister. Yet she's not able, she doesn't have any offspring. She has no fruit. This little sister, the revelation of Christ, the experience of Christ is very limited with her, although she has, like the bride, she has bridal potential. But she's not developed in bridal beauty, bridal affections, bridal qualities, and she's not fit yet for the marriage of the Lamb. So this little phrase here, she has no breasts. In the you go through the Song of Songs, as we've gone through, and many body parts, both of Christ and of the bride, are mentioned to reveal beauty, to reveal growth, to reveal the relationship between Christ and the bride. If you look at there's a long list of the king's body parts, which describe his inherent attributes and virtues. You can find this in chapter 5, verses 10 through 16. And it's a tenfold description of the perfections of the beloved Christ. It's his head, his locks of hair, his eyes, his cheeks, his lips, his hands, his belly, his legs, his countenance, his mouth. And we've covered all of this in the past. And then also in chapter 7, 1 through 5, the beloved Christ, along with others, looks at the bride, and they begin to describe her features, her qualities, and they're all fixed, and they're gazing upon a tenfold progressing beauty of the bride. And it starts with her feet, and it goes all the way up to her head, and it starts the feet, the thighs, the navel, the belly, the two breasts, the neck, the nose, the eyes, the head, and the hair. And each part is described to show an experience of Christ that has made her so beautiful to the king. And all the bystanders are just attracted as they see her beauty. And this is also an example that there are many places in the Song of Songs where certain body parts are focused on to show her beauty that is just so recognized by the beloved Christ. And so it's really a marvelous description. It's a marvelous beauty just to see her this way. And so even in fact, when you go through the song, sometimes it'll talk about the bride, and then on other hands it'll talk about the bridegroom, and it'll describe the same feature that they both have. So in chapter 1 verse 15 it says that the seeking maiden or the bride has dove's eyes. But then when you go to chapter 5 verse 12, it describes the beloved Christ as having dove's eyes. So what's happening here is the bride is becoming his reflection, his duplication, his continuation. So you have the bride who is his wife, and she's fit. She's fit just to match him and marry him in every way. So in this fellowship, I just want to maybe take like a parenthesis to go back through the song, because it brings up the breast of the little sister here. So let's just go through the song and see that the little sister has no breast. So she lacks the growth, ability to nourish others, and she also lacks the ability to give pleasure to the bridegroom king. And so you go through the song, and the breasts are mentioned or referred to at least 7 times. And it's here that I'd just like to address attention to when we fellowship about the breast, this body part in the song. I refer to 1 Thessalonians 5:8, and it talks about the breastplate. And when it describes the breastplate, it says, putting on faith and love as the breastplate. So when we talk about the 2 breasts, we're actually referring to faith, and we're talking about love. So throughout the song, what's growing, what's developing in the song is the faith and love of the bride. Her faith gives her the ability to receive of Christ, and her love gives her the ability to lay hold of, experience, and just enjoy what is of Christ. So these 7 places, there's one in chapter 1 verse 13, and this is the first mention of the breasts, and it says that the beloved is like a bundle of myrrh lying between my breasts all through the night. So Christ is dwelling in the bosom of this loving seeker. He's dwelling all through the night. So the beginning is a time of night when it's dark. So during the night, she begins to learn of faith, and she begins to learn of love, and she holds him close to her 2 breasts of faith and love, and she just embraces him through the night until the morning comes. So this is the beginning of the development of this body part of the bride. And then in chapter 4 verse 5 it says, your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. So here the bride begins to grow. There's an advancing beauty of the double tenderness of her bosom, and it's compared to a pair of animals in the field, which are very easily alarmed, because now she begins to realize the delicate sense of life, of the life union with Christ. And it describes her breasts as twins. So this just shows that both are of the same source, and they're found among the lilies. That means they're found communing and being nourished along the flowers, and we've seen before the flowers are just those that are learning to portray a trusting life, just as the lilies in chapter 6 of Matthew were a picture of those who trusted in God. And then as you go on, you go to chapter 7, verse 3, and it's pretty much the exact same description as chapter 4, verse 5, except it drops this matter of feeding among the lilies. So there's a development now where she's no longer feeding in the way for nourishment and growth because she's reached a fuller measure. Now the time is for her to take what she has, her maturity, and now she can bear children as a mother. Her being nourished becomes a source of supply to others. And this is where we're at in chapter 8, verse 8. She begins to nourish others. Then in chapter 7, it says, the beloved tells her, your breasts are like clusters of fruit. So now it's like her breasts become a bound together bunch of dates or grapes. And these grapes or dates, this fruit, is the fruit that was found in the land of promise for inheritance. So she's beginning to know God's eternal purpose and intention in the land of promise, because this was God's intention for the people of Israel to enter into this good land. So now she's nourishing others to come into the eternal purpose of God, into the land of promise with abundant fruit. And so her faith and hope have laid hold of God's intention, and now what she's doing is she's bringing others into the same place of enjoyment and pleasure for God's purpose. And then it says your breasts are like clusters of the vine. So in union with the true vine, she begins to bear fruit in clusters. So you can see from a maiden in the night holding Christ to her breast. Now she's bearing fruit in clusters. She's the blessing of her life is just connected to the vine, and she's bringing this vine juice, this wine, to bring joy to both God and man. And then in chapter 8, you remember it's like she's recalling or reminiscing. She says, oh, I wish you were like my brother. She's telling the beloved Christ, who nursed at my mother's breast. So she's saying that both her and Christ can be found having the same source. And this is like in Hebrews chapter 2. He says, he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified are all of one, and he's not ashamed to call us brothers. So the mother is the heavenly source, as in Galatians chapter 4. And so both the bride and the bridegroom are living the heavenly life, nourished with the same supply, having the same source of life, having the same love, having the same glory. So then after all of this development, all of this riches of, you see how her breast developed, her faith develops, her love develops. Now she says in chapter 8, we have a little sister, but she has no breasts. She's not yet grown. What are we going to do for our little sister? She's a feminine blood relative sibling. She's a little girl. But the double tenderness of her faith and love of her bosom has not yet developed. So the bride and the bridegroom are burdened for her development, her burden for her perfection of bridal beauty, that her breast can become fit as a lover of Christ to be part of the corporate bride. So you could see how we gain something of Christ, but we are not the end. We need to pour out the riches of Christ that we have into others' lives, that they can grow and gain bridal beauty, bridal affections, and bridal qualities. And then in chapter 8, verse 10, we haven't come to there yet. It says her breasts are like towers. So now her faith and her love have just grown up like towers of victory. Of on one hand, these towers are for defense against the enemy. Her faith is strong against the enemy. He's overcome the evil one. And her love has defeated anything that tries to come. What can separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ? But on the other hand, she's there with these breasts as towers to care for the tender ones. She's tender enough to care for the weak ones, the young ones, the disheartened ones, even the backsliding ones. So anything that would come in to damage God's purpose, she's ready to stand against. But yet the weak ones, she's able to enter into their situation and care for them. So as you go through this body part, the breasts of faith and love throughout the song, we need to open to our beloved Christ. We need to get with him and just in two ways. One is to recognize our growth of faith, our growth of love and our experience. And as we enter into this song, we want to be those who are fully mature, fully growing, develop into a mature bride for his pleasure. But on the other hand, we care for our growth, but on the other hand, we want to care that we've become a nourishing supply that we've received from Christ to increase our faith, to increase our love, that is being poured out into other lives. Is this my condition? Am I pouring Christ into other lives? Have I become a factor for little ones, young ones who need growth? So our prayer should be, Lord, develop in me faith and love, that I could lay hold of you and become perfected in bridal beauty and bridal affections and bridal character. But that's not the end, Lord. Lord, I just pray that I could pour the riches of this wonderful, beloved Christ, whom I've experienced, who's growing in me, and supply the milk of the word to others, that they could grow, that they could develop, and that they could be perfected with bridal beauty, that the Lord can gain his corporate bride.